Hey, what's going on, everyone? So in this section, we're going to be covering the sales organization chart. We're going to show you exactly how sales organizations are going to be structured, whether you are working at, let's say, a small company, a startup, all the way to an enterprise company. It's going to give you a high-level, holistic view of the entire organization, so you know exactly where you can fit in, what the job opportunities are, especially when it comes to advancement. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing you got to understand before we get to the charts is that most sales organizations are going to have the same structure, but depending on the size of the company, there are going to be slight variances of how the structure works. But for the most part, like 80-90% of the time, it's going to follow a similar structure I'm going to show you. And so you're going to learn, the major sales roles in an organization, how they rank from entry level to seniority, right? And we're going to cover how sales organizations are going to be structured from SMB all the way to enterprise. And so with that said, let's go ahead and dive into the charts and give you a view of how this all looks. All right, so starting things off, this is going to be the basic sales organization structure. So I would say like 90% of all sales orgs are kind of built this way. This is the most basic structure, assuming that there's only one person for each role, but I'm going to show you what it looks like when there's multiple people, like multiple account executives and things like that. So at the top, you're going to have a CEO. Next is going to be Chief Revenue Officer, who reports directly to the CEO, and their job is to generate revenue for the company. Under the CRO, you're going to have VP of Sales, which is just the next level of management, and you could have multiple VP of Sales at large enterprise. And then after the VP of Sales, it's a sales director. From there, sales manager, account executive. So from the sales manager, these are going to be the people that directly work with the individual contributors. So the account executive, the sales development rep, they're the people that are going to be actually doing the work, right? Calling people on the phone, doing sales meetings, things like that. This is where those people live. Account executives close deals. SDRs are the ones that generate leads, right? So for sales managers, directors, and above, they are not really doing the selling. Sometimes they do come into a meeting if it's important, or if the account executive can't do it by themselves. They'll come in. For example, a CEO might pop into a meeting to, meet the clients and make them feel comfortable, or a VP of Sales might do that. But a lot of times it's just the account executive's job. And here it's just middle management, people that manage all the different type of roles, right? And in this example, it doesn't look that complex because, there's only one person at each phase. So let's go ahead and look at what it really looks like now that you have a basic understanding of the sales organization structure. Okay, so now we are in the general sales organization structure, where it's a little more complex and more realistic to what a company looks like, right? So let's go ahead and start at the top. So, from the basic understanding of this, you understand there's a CEO, CRO, right? Usually there's only one CRO. And then from there, you might have a VP of Sales. Now, you might have multiple VP of Sales, so you can have a whole separate branch that is a copy of this one, right? But for now, let's say we have one VP of Sales. From there, what's going to happen is you're going to have Director of Sales, and then the Director are going to handle the Sales Manager, and then the Sales Managers, they're going to have multiple account executives working under them. And a lot of times they'll have more than two, maybe like 5 or even 10. It really just depends on the company. 10 would be a lot, actually. So maybe like 5 to 10 maybe. And then from there, each account executive is going to have an SDR, one SDR, or they can have multiple SDRs working under them to generate leads. And so that's essentially the structure. So when you are, let's say, an SDR and you're starting your sales career, you're basically starting over here at the bottom, right? Your job is just to generate the leads for the account executive. Account executive closes the deal. Sales manager kind of manages all the individual contributors, and the director will handle the managers, and the VP will handle the directors, and chief revenue handles the VP of Sales, and so on, right? And so that's essentially how the structure works. So if you started as an SDR and you want to move up this ladder when it comes to management, you would basically just go up the ladder, right? And that's essentially what the career progression looks like. You become an account executive usually, then you become a sales manager, sales director, and if you want to keep moving up management, you definitely can do that. Now, if you want to stay as an account executive and you don't want to be a manager, that's totally okay too, because there are different tiers of account executives. You might want to become an enterprise account executive, and that's your job. Ever want to be a sales manager? That's okay. Many people can make a lot of money being an account executive, just closing deals left and right, and they have no interest in becoming a manager. And, it's just a different skill set, right? Because account executives, they do the work. They're the one that sell. Account managers manage people that sell. So you just have to understand like where you want to fall in place. And a lot of times account executives can make more than director of sales. Sometimes they can make more than VP of Sales if they are really good, right? Being an account manager for a long-term career, that's definitely a viable option that I see a lot of people do. Other people want to become a manager, so it just depends on what you want. So now we're going to get into branches, right? So, in the previous chart I showed you, it kind of showed that everything was connected to each other, but a lot of times you might have separate branches for different roles. So I'll give you an example. So you might have an SDR branch and account executive branch, right? Let's say you have sales development reps, and then each of these reps will have a manager, and this is going to be the SDR manager, and then that manager reports to a director, and then so on, right? In parallel, at the same company, you might have an account executive branch where you have the account executives on one team under an account executive manager, under an account director. So as you can see here, this side is not connected to this side. These sales development reps have a SDR manager. These account executives have a account executive manager. So they have different managers, even though they may work together. So each sales development rep might be assigned to an account executive. So they are connected, right? So this person will generate leads for this person. This person might generate leads for the account executive, right? And so on. But because they report under different managers, it's like they're in a whole separate team, but they happen to also collaborate and work together, right? It's the same for account managers, right? Or account management. Because you might have an account manager who has their own branch of account manager, and this is the account manager's manager, and then the account manager director. They might be their own branch, but these people may work together because even though they're in separate branches, they do have to collaborate if they are in the same territory. So when you look at a holistic view of everything, all these people, right, they may be collaborating together, but they have different managers, different VPs, different directors, but all the individual contributors, they're all working together as a team. So, it's not always like everything is just like this AE is connected to this SDR. It's more like you can have separate branches. And this is typically more common at larger companies like a Salesforce or an Oracle. Like when I worked at Oracle, this is pretty much what it looked like. But if you are working at, let's say, a smaller company, it would look more like this, where everything's more connected versus separate branches. So you just have to understand that every sales organization might be a little different, but from the top to bottom, it's kind of the same, but the branches might work out differently. And so with that said, that is how sales organizations will typically look, whether you're working at a smaller company or a larger company. It's pretty much more or less the same thing. It's just how many branches they have and how they separate that out. So that's it. That's it for this video, and I will see you in the next.